All right, if everybody could have seated, we're going to welcome our next panel up this way. Thank you, thank you. So I can't think of a better way to end this conference than a handoff from Randy Moss to Donna Barton Brothers. It seems very, very fitting. So welcome Donna Barton Brothers to the stage again, and her panelists are joining her. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Welcome. This is not going to be quite as heady a discussion as the last one we had. Hopefully, it'll be a bit more entertaining and a nice panel to close out the session with. This session is going to explore how major racing events attract top horses, engage global audiences, and elevate the sport through creative marketing, broadcast excellence, and exceptional on-site experiences. Obviously, I'm your moderator. Our panelists are directly to my left, Josh Christian, Vice President of Racing and Nominations at Breeders' Cup Limited. In between, Nick Smith, Director of Racing and Public Affairs at Ascot Racecourse. And on the end, we have Tom Hashimoto, General Manager of the Japan Racing Association. He's in the New York office these days. We're going to get started with a short presentation from Tom on the many ways that the Japan Racing Association has worked to improve its racing and quality of its horses through international outreach. Tom has been with the JRA since 2003, and he's held various roles including marketing, finance, and international relations. He was based in the JRA New York office from 2012 to 2015 before spending 8 years in the international department at JRA headquarters, where he was involved with everything from international racing to the operation of Japanese betting pools overseas. I could actually go on and on about the rest of his credentials, but suffice to say that it would be difficult to find anyone more knowledgeable about Japanese horse racing, the JRA, and their international racing involvement, or their betting pools. Tom, if you could please present for us.
Thank you, Donna. It's my great pleasure to be here today to speak about Japan's global journey and our learnings, challenges, and innovation along the way. Please let me begin by briefly introducing our organization. The Japan Racing Association, JRA, is a national public body responsible for organizing, operating horse racing in Japan. We manage 10 race courses, more than 35 off-track betting facilities, 2 training centers, 2 training farms, horse racing school, equestrian park, and equine research institute, and so on. So let's start with what attracts people to international racing events. I believe 2 factors are key: whether the race itself is compelling and whether the international events give original and appealing social experiences for race goers. Looking around the room, I see some familiar faces who have attended the Japan Cup this year and before. I think the most accurate evaluation for the Japan Cup would come directly from their experiences, but from the JRA perspective, if our guests feel that Japanese culture and Tokyo culture provide something unique, something that inspires curiosity and invites them to find out more, and is different from what they can experience at their own racetracks, then that is exactly what we want to achieve. I attended the Breeders' Cup earlier this year, and beyond the exceptional quality of the races, I was once again deeply impressed by the world-class social events which embody the entertainment culture of the United States, and certainly live up to the name World Championships. Congratulations, Josh. However, I do not believe that Japan can or should replicate them, nor do we need to. Within the common framework of international racing, each country should provide something original and experience that is uniquely their own. I believe that is a key to a successful international event. Looking back on the history of Japanese racing, the Japan Cup didn't achieve success as an international event right at the beginning. Our journey has been full of challenges. We are very fortunate enough this year to welcome one of the world's top horses, Carandagan, from Aga Khan Stats, and he won with a record time. It was just 10 days ago. But in reality, we struggle every year to attract top horses, particularly from North America, where the challenge has become even greater over the past 10 years. The Japan Cup started in 1981 as Japan's first international race. Its goal was to raise Japan's competitiveness on the global stage, promote international exchange, and showcase the sporting nature of horse racing by inviting world-class horses to Japan. In the first year, 7 horses from the United States, Canada, India, and Turkey were invited. The American mare Meaji won the race, and American and Canadian horses swept the top 4 positions. Meanwhile, Japanese runners were far behind, revealing a big gap in ability. I have heard the entire Japanese racing industry of that era was all upset by the overwhelming difference in level. And the JRA set a major strategic goal to create strong horses capable of competing on the world stage by improving breeding, training, and racing practices and techniques across our industry. Japanese Racing Connection sought to learn from overseas horsemen, but for more than 15 years after the first Japan Cup, foreign dominance continued. However, around the year 2000, the situation reversed, and the Japanese horse began to win. I think this shift can be attributed to 2 key factors. The first, the revolutionary improvement in Japanese bloodline after the introduction of Sunday Silence as a stallion. And the second, the persistent efforts of those in Japanese racing industry to continue running without giving up. In 2023, Japan's Equinox became the Longines world's best racehorse, and the 43rd Japan Cup was named the world's best race for the first time in history. This was a significant milestone for Japan, and the culmination of decades of running carried forward across generations. I currently work at the JRA New York office, which opened in 1991, about 35 years ago. The JRA also has offices in London, Paris, Sydney, and Hong Kong. You might wonder why this is. The answer is simple. We need to continue running by studying not only racing, but also the broader culture and lifestyle and people in each country, and bringing that knowledge back to Japan and sharing, we were able to improve Japanese racing step by step and arrive where we are today. Over the past decades, Japanese trained horses have won major races around the world, including the Saudi Cup, Dubai World Cup, Cox Plate, Melbourne Cup, and Hong Kong Cup, and so on. And as you know, Forever Young won the Breeders' Cup Classic last month. After the race, I received many kind messages of congratulations from my American friends. Perhaps this is because, fortunately, That day happened to fall right after the Breeders' Cup, when the Los Angeles Dodgers, with Ohtani and Yamamoto on the team, defeated the Toronto Blue Jays in the final game of the World Championship to claim the title. For the Japanese who were in California that day, it became the most unforgettable and joyful day in the year. Here, looking at Forever Young's pedigree, 3 generations back, you see names such as Sunday Silence, Stormcat Epindi, and Deputy Minister, star horses representing American and Canadian racing. We can say Forever Young's pedigree is a very beautiful product of generations of North American horses, to which Japan added its own spice through Sunday Silence 4, Deep Impact, which was a true masterpiece in Japanese racing history. In short, the Breeders' Cup Classic win does not belong to the Japanese racing industry alone. It represents a shared achievement made possible through the collaboration of North American and Japanese breeding and racing traditions. So for the winning of Breeders' Cup Classic this year, I want to say congratulations to all of you. What I want to emphasize is that thoroughbreds and thoroughbred racing are global assets that should be shared. It is a great loss to keep top horses confined within national borders. For the advancement of international racing, highlighting sporting appeal and broader public engagement, it is essential to foster international mindset and encourage competition across nations. There is one race that symbolizes Japan's long-held ambition in international competition, which is the Prix du Arc de Triomphe, held every October at Paris-Longchamp. This photo is from 1999, when the Japanese trained horse, but actually American bred, El Condor Pasa, finished second. I was about nearly the same age as a student in Arizona University, and here today, the race was around midnight in Japan. And I still vividly remember how excited I was to be watching the race. That moment inspired me to pursue work that would one day support Japanese horses competing in major races around the world, leading directly to where I am today. Since then, Japan has sent top horses to the Arc almost every year, and with Orfebo coming closest to the victory in 2012. Let's see the video of the 2012 Arc.
Le numéro 10 qui se rapproche avec beaucoup de ressources avec Mikaï Glinka, numéro 4 qui vient à son extérieur. On voit aussi complètement en dehors le numéro 18 Brett Evans qui est maintenant lancé par son partenaire et Masterstroke aussi, Pierre, qui vient très vite.
Et Orfèvre et Christophe Soumillon qui viennent à l'extérieur en roue libre. Masterstroke vient de prendre l'avantage sur les millages, se défend bien, mais Orfèvre va sans doute donner son arc de triomphe au Japon avec Christophe Soumillon en selle. Orfèvre est en train de faire une véritable démonstration, même s'il a penché à droite au moment de prendre l'avantage. Attention, car Solemia se ressaisit. Attention, Christophe Soumillon, tu vas peut-être être battu, Christophe, car Olivier Pellier, formidable Olivier Pellier avec Solemia qui est venu gagner l'arc devant monsieur Orfèvre. Je croyais bien que Christophe Soumillon et Orfèvre avaient fait la différence. Mais regardez ce diable d'Olivier Pellier en selle sur Solemia, entraîné par Carlos Lafonperias qui défend les couleurs vertes et mer et qui est venu s'imposer la 3e place pour le 14, Master Truck.
Inside is a Japanese horse. What do you think? For me, this could be one of the worst oh my gosh moment in my life. Just 100 meters to the finish line, everyone thought Japanese dream finally come true. But this was like a roller coaster. The Japanese fans flew into the highest excitement only to dive into the despair. 25 years have passed since El Condor passed the challenge, and every year in Paris, we tell our lives, we tell ourselves, next year, next year, next year. Can you imagine how many times have we said this word? The Japanese racing industry has upheld the never give up spirit, perhaps akin to the samurai spirit, long before the children in Arizona University were born, and that spirit continues today. Why do we continue sending Japan's top horses to the Arc every year? Because there is a story. Winning the Arc would certainly bring glory and prize money to connection, but it is more than that. It will finally bring a happy ending to a story that Japanese horsemen and fans have been passing for decades. In Japanese racing, a racehorse is not just for the owner. We often hear trainers and jockeys say in their interviews, we want to meet the expectation of the racing fans. This reflects our belief that celebrates a shared asset with the racing fans. In recent years, people in the international racing sometimes kindly describe Japanese racing and JRA's management as one of the successful models. We are not fully satisfied at all and understand that the circumstances and backgrounds of racing are different depending on each country and each state. But if someone asks about the secret behind the JRA's work, I would say this. We have consistently upheld the following fundamental policy of JRA management. JRA keep running every week. Number one, together with our customers, we put the customer first and work to satisfy everyone. Number two, with dreams and excitement, we enhance the appeal of horse racing, which combines the power of races, the beauty of horses, and the fun of handicapping, and deliver dreams and excitement to everyone. Number three, with trust. We steadily operate racing with integrity under a comfortable and safe environment trusted by everyone. Number four, with societies. We fulfill our responsibility to society and contribute to make it more sustainable and better by providing horse racing as an entertainment for everyone. We also commit to equine culture by being close to horses. And lastly, number five, and for the future. We strive to develop racing with its history and tradition and create horse racing as an international sports entertainment together with everyone. These are the very simple and fundamental principles, and they never appear complicated or difficult. However, truly putting them into practice is extremely challenging. At the JRA, all staff members always check whether our project and actions are aligned with these policies. And first and foremost is, together with our customers, we place the highest importance on this. And we believe racing is a drama filled with full of stories created our fans together. Racing begins with breeding, continues through pre-training, training, and racing, and returns back to breeding again. Stories accumulate through this cycle, maximizing the appeal of the sports. We call this the thoroughbred value chain. While attention tends to focus on racing itself, we should not forget that many stories are born under the breeding and training, and these stories will connect to the future. And lastly, in any era, it is also important to be flexible in adjusting our approach in response to various changes. Last month, the JRA announced a revision to the bonus system for the Japan Cup starting next year. This reform is based on the principle of selection and concentration and aimed to increase the overall value of Japanese racing by further raise the Japan Cup status as one of the world's top races, while also encouraging the participation of global top horses in JRA Grade 1 races. While the total prize money for the Japan Cup will still remain approximately $7 million US, with the winner's share being over $3 million, a new bonus system, which is adding the prize money up to $5 million, will be introduced from 2026. This is intended to further encourage horses that have won a JRA designated top international races to participate in the Japan Cup. Should one of these horses win, the combined total of the winner's purse and bonus will exceed $8 million, making it one of the highest prize money for tough races in the world. While we have consistently secured top horses from Europe for the Japan Cup, but runners from North America have been absent for more than a decade. We hope that top horses from America will also take on the challenge of racing in Japan, and that we can welcome more people for that special moment next November when the world's top horses gather at Tokyo Racetrack for the Japan Cup. So on this note,
Welcome to the Tokyo Racecourse. Hello, everyone. I'm Murray Johnson, one of the race callers here, and I will be calling the Japan Cup later in the day. What it means to be here in front of 80,000 people. Back in the day, there were 150 at times, but they've capped the crowd, but the excitement is still there. It's a pleasant day, lots of sunshine, big crowd. The crowd really, they're all about the racing. There's a bit of drinking going on, lots of eating. There's families on the inside, they're getting entertained. The kids are enjoying it. The mums and dads, the students, the younger people, they're all here to adore the races and the horses that they love. You'll see banners everywhere, cheering their favorite jockey, cheering their favorite horse, but they're all here to soak up the atmosphere. It's the 45th running of the Japan Cup, and it's going to be a beauty. We've got a challenger this year from overseas, and a strong challenger in Calandigan. Well, can that gelding take out the Japan Cup? We'll find out later in the day. Well, I wish I knew now, but it's an excellent field. Stand by. They're ready in the Japan Cup. They're off and racing, and going straight to the lead is Seiyun Hades. Swooping across is Ho Ho Biscuits, and up there is Quadanor. Shin Emperor's there as well. Three wide going on with Danon Desile the inside, Danon Beluga. Calandigan is dead in front, but Masquerade Ball is kicking. Masquerade Ball the inside, Calandigan the outside. Head and head, bobbing to the line. They hit the line, and maybe Calandigan's won it from Masquerade Ball. Danon Desile's third. They've broken the record of an Armoured Eye. 2:20.3. Calandigan likes firm ground. He now really loves Tokyo.
Okay, this video was created by America's Best Racing just 2 weeks ago, Japan Cup. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you, Tom. So for anybody who gets feedback from people that horses don't love to race, if you go back and watch this 2025 Japan Cup, keep it on your phone, because the horse that you saw loose on the inside lost his rider leaving the starting the gate, was dead last, made like this great move through the turn on the inside, went through horses and got up for the win at the end. Of course, it didn't count because he was a loose horse, but so much for horses not loving to compete. Tom, I do have a couple of questions for you. You talk about the fans and wanting to make them a part of the sport, but how do you do that? Because typically, you know, we think of them as spectators. So how do you make them feel seen and bring them in to be a part of the sport?
I think for me, race is more than contest of speed from the starting gate to the finish line. Rather, it's something far more dynamic. A kind of live artwork created when the energy, passion, excitement, and tension of the fans blend together with the performance of horses on the racetrack. I think this synergy creates a deeply emotional experience when where fans don't watch the race. They themselves are part of shaping the race. You can see this in Japan during the call to post. We are very fortunate to welcome such large crowds on Grade 1 race days, like 80,000 on the Japan Cup day. When the call to post begins just before the race, it's truly special moment as the entire crowds join into clap in sync with the music. This creates a shared emotional space where the fans rarely come together, even when they bet on different horses. You can feel this, for example, when my old Kentucky home plays during the post-parade at the Kentucky Derby in United States. And also, for example, in Australia at the Everest, it is a moment when fans sing Sweet Caroline. This is a moment that creates a sense of belonging, or being part of something special and larger than yourself. That exhilaration, the feeling of being immersed in the race itself, I think creating and delivering such moment for fans is a key. On the other hand, off the racetrack, it's also important to create opportunity for fans to feel and touch horse racing in their daily lives, especially when it comes to attracting younger generation to our sports.
Thank you, Tom. Are you still? Oh, go ahead.
Yes. This is Taffy. He's one of my best and longest friends because he has been working as a JRA's mascot for over 20 years. He was created in collaboration with Sanrio, the same company that came up with Hello Kitty. Taffy merchandise is very popular in Japan, particularly among women and children. And it's not uncommon to see young women walking through city streets with Taffy keychains dangling from their bags. And more recently, JRA has supported a production of TV drama called Royal Family, which is centered on the world of Japanese racing. The story is currently airing in Japan and has been well received by audiences. I think you can see them, you can watch them on Netflix. Beyond Taffy and TV drama, Umamusume and cosplay in Santa Anita, as Nathan spoke about early this morning. A broader range of horse racing themed merchandise, manga, anime, movie, video, and mobile game and products in convenience stores has further integrated our sport as daily pop culture. This initiative highlights the importance of cross-industry collaboration, but this cannot be achieved by racing organizers alone. By actively fostering partnership, we can expand the reach and create more opportunities for public experience and enjoy racing in their everyday lives.
Thank you. So lots of opportunities for engagement is how you do it. I need to welcome in our other two panelists. Joshua Christian is the Vice President of Racing and Nominations at Breeders' Cup, and we have to give him a round of applause for changing his wedding anniversary plans to come here and be with us, so thank you for that.
Yeah, and I don't know what, yeah, it's great, but, you know, I just want everyone in this room to know that we haven't been Rapoli'd. We will have the Breeders' Cup next year at Keeneland and at Belmont Park in 2027, and we're looking forward to that.
You're not going to take Rapoli's bait right now?
No, we're not. We haven't been Rapoli'd yet. You know, he's fabulous and one of the best owners on the planet, but you know, we plan on running in the future. So.
Well, Claire Crosby calls you the world's leading expert on international horse recruitment, but I think the guy to your left is going to give you a run for your money on that. Nick Smith is, of course, the Director of Racing and Public Affairs at Ascot Racecourse. Now, Nick is known as Nick Smith LVO. In 2023, he was appointed as Lieutenant of the Royal Victorian Order, LVO, recognizing his service to the monarchy via Ascot. The LVO designation shows recognition not just by the industry, but by the Crown for his services through Ascot's brand and heritage. Nick joined Ascot Racecourse in 2000, having previously worked at the Daily Mail and Sporting Life publications in the UK. And not only is he a huge horse racing guy, had lunch with him yesterday, and I found out he's also a huge American football fan. So
Bengals, sadly. My man Gatewood over there, we've been through the last few weeks of hell together.
Well, Nick, thank you for joining us. I have a bunch of questions for both of you, but Nick, I've read a lot about what you do. It includes oversee the horse racing program and international recruitment of runners for your flagship meeting, Royal Ascot, working to attract top horses and trainers, build and maintain relationships with overseas racing jurisdictions such as Australia, USA, Japan, etc., liaise with media, stakeholders, and the royal family, and promote Ascot's brand internationally, strategic planning of race meetings, positioning Ascot in the world pool betting and global racing economy, and you also sit on the Ascot Authority Limited Board and the Ascot Racecourse Betting and Gambling Limited Board, overseeing communications and the political functions of Ascot, among other things. So now we know what you do, but we don't know how you do all that. So could you fill us in a little bit?
That sounds it sounds quite grand, but actually, let's be honest about it, most of it's just great fun. You know, we get to travel the world, come to great conferences like this. I think I've missed one Breeders' Cup for the last 25 years outside of the pandemic. Been to several Japan Cups and Melbourne Cups, etc., etc. So we're very lucky, and you know, balancing all of that, it's like everything else. I mean, Josh would be the same. You know, you just have to have good people around you, be able to take the slack on the day-to-day stuff, and just give yourself some air space to make the bigger decisions, and hopefully get half of them right.
And you have a good team that helps you, obviously, with everything.
Sure, we have a good team.
Josh, in your role as Vice President of Racing and Nominations at Breeders' Cup, your responsibilities, it's a long list, just like Nick's, overseeing the recruitment of world-class horses, trainers, and owners for the Breeders' Cup, directing the International Breeders' Cup Challenge Series, and managing relationships with racing officials, breeders, industry consultants, and across multiple continents, expanding the Breeders' Cup global reach and reinforcing its reputation as a principle of racing excellence. Under your leadership, global participation in the championships has more than doubled since 2013, establishing the Breeders' Cup as the most globally represented event in the sport. So again, we know what you do, and we obviously have to guess that you travel a lot, but how do you do it?
Yeah, we travel a lot. You know, I go to Ascot, and we go to Japan, you know, Ascot, and it comes down to relationships, and, you know, the JRA and Ascot, just to pick on these two because they're here, you know, we've had relationships for years and years, and we depend on each other, and we're different than each other, but we learn from each other, and we work around year-round, and that has to do with everyone that works at the Breeders' Cup, and it just comes down to we love what we do, and we work hard, and we depend on people around the world to make the Breeders' Cup what it is, which is a truly global event, just as the Japan Cup is and Royal Ascot is.
Nick, I've got a few questions for you. You've been with Ascot Racecourse since 2000. Under your watch and in your role, Ascot has expanded its global appeal, broadcasting in 180 territories. This is under your watch, attracting international runners and enhancing the event's prestige. What factors and efforts have contributed to this success?
Well, In 2000, Royal Ascot Royal Ascot is the 1 week, Ascot Racecourse is the whole programme, but for the purposes of the international aspect, it's really Royal Ascot and the King George in July. We only had 3 Group 1 races at Royal Ascot. We now have 8. You know, the world has changed. It's become one global pattern. You know, it's so important that the pattern is protected. We work with the likes of Josh. We work with the Japan Cup. The Japan Cup carries an enormous bonus for winners of races around the world. For example, Calandigan picked up, was it 3 million or something for having won the King George at Ascot and going on to win the Japan Cup. We have had multiple winners at Royal Ascot and the King George who've come on to run at the Breeders' Cup through the Breeders' Cup winning your in scheme. In reverse, we have various initiatives. We have some races, some wildcard races run at Churchill Downs over the Derby meeting. It's slightly different for us because this is not meant to sound arrogant, but because turf racing in Europe and Japan is so far clear in quality than the rest of the world, it's actually very hard to get horses to come and run in Japan and in Europe. So, you know, having Calandigan run and win was a huge moment for the Japan Cup because most of the horses that we from Europe have sent over in recent years to the Japan Cup have found it hard. Americans going to the Japan Cup, great aspiration, and I'm sure you'd like to have Australians too. But the reality is that the racing is outside the sprinters in Australia. It's very hard to find horses of that quality. So for us to try and bring Japanese horses to come all the way over to Europe to run is hard because our prize money is a lot lower, sadly. But the quality of the horses that they find in Europe is so high that it's hard to open that door. So when you get a sort of like a completely, a genuine moment in history, like Tepin winning the Queen Anne for America, that's a really big moment. You know, we had hoped that there'd be more horses that came from America outside the 2-year-old juvenile area on the back of that. But it is very hard. But we're striving to do that. Internationalising is important. Punters, handicappers, viewers, they want to see international runs. They want to see horses from around the world competing on their stage. That's what it's all about. I mean, you know, Mike Ripoli made a valid point about supporting your own industry first. Yeah, of course you do. But you also want to internationalise. Not every other sport, but most global sports are truly international. And even those that aren't international, like the NFL, they take the game overseas with meaningful games. That is the landscape we're playing on. And that is where we work in the betting area with the likes of Hong Kong Jockey Club, with Whirlpool, which we launched with the Hong Kong Jockey Club just before the pandemic.
And on that note of Whirlpool, how significant was that to the success of just being able to increase the purse money for the Royal Ascot meeting?
Yeah, it's important, but as you know, with most profit and loss accounts, when one element goes up, there's always something to go down. But of course, it was hugely important. We're lucky. All of our Group 1 race days at Ascot are part of the Whirlpool, and we'd like to see more of our race days go into that venture, perhaps something like the Shergar Cup, which is a jockeys competition. That would be interesting too. Whirlpool it's a work of genius by the Hong Kong Jockey Club because it genuinely gives a global pool where the ebbs and flows of each market can be registered within the prices that are on offer. Of course, it's primarily a Hong Kong pool, but so you'll see little quirks like Frankie Dettori was never as popular in Hong Kong as Ryan Moore, so a Ryan Moore horse will be overbet in Hong Kong. So if you're sitting there in England, knowing that the pool in England is so much smaller, you can benefit from like Ryan Moore horses being the bigger price. There's quite interesting dynamics within that.
So you are trying to attract horses, but that goes through the people. I believe one of the first U.S. trainers to race in, at least successfully at Royal Ascot, was Wesley Ward. And of course, Bobby Flay is a huge fan of coming to Royal Ascot. So does it start there? Is it just that it's become a more global international event, bucket list item, and so you get to the people who that might attract?
It's always the people. The horses can't make their decisions. The people stay, and the horses move on quite quickly. So you need to be respectful of the up-and-coming trainers. You need to be respectful of trainers who are having a bad period in their career. You need to always be talking to them. You don't want to just talk to the people at the top with the good horse today. You need to be talking to the people who are having a hard time, because then they know that you're there for them when times are better. So I make an effort when I come. I usually come over here to Florida in January, which is not for the Pegasus, but around a time when it's a bit quieter, and go to Ocala and Payson and all those. May go to Tampa, may go to Gulfstream, probably watch a bit of NFL, and then and hopefully meet people you've never met before, trainers who may be coming onto the map in the future. Of course, you know, in mature markets like Japan, where the trainers are there for the long haul. You know who the key players are. You know to go straight to the Yoshida brothers, you know, as task number one. They're the first dinner invite anyone ever has when they go to Japan, because they control a third of the racing market there through their horse ownership and breeding industry. So you have to have a tailored approach. There's no playbook for doing this, and Josh, I'm sure, will agree. You know, Josh is a genius at what he does. I mean, he is an industrial level networker on the global stage. So, this might sound like paid for fun, but he's in a box with Keir Jarabshan at the Oasis concert. This is how you do it. It's about building relationships.
Mm-hmm. Well, Josh is a smooth operator. We're going to bring him in a minute, but I do want to ask you one more question before we move to Josh. Some of the Royal Ascot and Breeders' Cup races have changed their traditional dates or time slots to fit into primetime TV spots in the NBC lineup. How important is the NBC audience to the international success of Royal Ascot?
Right, so NBC are really, really important partners to us. I mean, the final day of Royal Ascot isn't just on the... I don't want to go back on the Mike Rapoli naming every single outlet that NBC have, but whilst the racing on Tuesday to Friday is covered on away from the major network, it's the Royal Ascot Saturday is on the main network. That's a hell of a thing for an overseas race meeting in a country like America. So our partnership with NBC is fundamental. You know, just like it's our partnership with ITV at home, you know, we work with the likes of Channel 7 in Australia, but the NBC relationship is by far the strongest. And when NBC and the Breeders' Cup asked us, could we get a win in your in race on Saturday when we have the biggest, widest audience, you know, we said, sure, let's make that work. So we moved the Norfolk Stakes, which is a 5 furlong juvenile race, which leads into the equivalent race at the Breeders' Cup. We moved that to Saturday, so that specifically, so the American racing audience could see a winning your in race on that main channel.
Josh, now I've got to bring you into it because of that. Also, NBC and Breeders' Cup works together on the scheduling of the races and trying to get the Breeders' Cup Classic into primetime television, especially when it's in the West Coast. It does make it a little bit more challenging, but can you talk about how important it is to get those big races on the primetime spots?
Yeah, it's so important, you know, and that's, as Nick says, for the world to see. You know, and we have a deal with NBC that goes through 2030, and we've just had an excellent relationship with them, and I think NBC does just a magical job painting the picture of horse racing and telling the stories, and knowing you're a very important part of that as well. And they're just a great partner, you know, whether we're at Keeneland or Del Mar. You know, the majority of our fans have to watch from wherever they are in the world on TV, so you better make sure that it looks like you're there in person, you know, in person, and I think NBC is the best at what they do.
Well, you're nice to say that about me, but I'm lucky enough to talk to the winner, and the winner is what's important. I'm just lucky enough to be there. But Josh, you're 45 years old, and really this is, I want some of the industry or the RTIP students to hear this, because you've been in the industry for more than 20 years, but the Breeders' Cup is 41 years old, so you were pretty young when it started. Can you talk about when you first became aware of the Breeders' Cup, and then later when you first knew you really wanted to get involved with the sport of horse racing?
Yeah, well, I think it was easy for me. I'm a Kentucky kid, so you know, we're basketball, we're, you know, horse racing, and we're bourbon. So you find out at an early age you're not going to be Michael Jordan, so horse racing is your next love, and you go into. And I was lucky enough, my father was a farrier, and my parents owned a horse farm, so, you know, as far back as I could remember, we were leaving school early to go to the races at Turfway Park or Churchill Downs or even Ellis Park, which is a long way from Lexington, but it was in our blood. So it was just something that was always there, and I think looking back on it, on my first memory of the Breeders' Cup is probably a Rossi, and just was a 1991 juvenile.
How old would you have been then?
I would have been 11, but
oh, wow.
and that's just what he did in that, and you know, this might upset Nick, I don't think Frankel ever did what Arazi did in that race. So
Yeah.
I mean, that
Not
really.
many horses did what
I think
Arazi did.
Frankel had a better record as a 3 and 4-year-old.
We just set a race, though. We're not talking about a record.
So let's talk about handle for the Breeders' Cup, which I realize is not necessarily your area of expertise, but certainly you know more about it than most people in the room. How much does the Japanese participation affect the all sources handle? And I ask that because while attendance is capped at Del Mar, it is typically one of the lower attendance Breeders' Cups. But in terms of handle, it's also typically one of the largest, and in fact, it accounts for the second largest handle Breeders' Cup ever. So how important is that Japanese participation to the handle?
Yeah, well, it's vital, not just from a wagering standpoint, from a breeding stock sale. And you know, I'll give you a few examples. It's, you know, the JRA kindly lets 4 Breeders' Cup races get wagered on. It's the Classic, the Filly and Mare Turf, the Turf, and the Mile. As long as there's a Japanese horse in that race, Japan bets on it. And, you know, we had 7 Breeders' Cup horses start this year that came from Japan, and that generated $17 million in handle, which is massive, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, it's huge. And, you know, like I said, it's an industry thing. It's not, it helps our bottom line through a wagering standpoint, and the stallion nomination, you know, I think we had 72 stallions from Japan that take part in our breeding program this year, that's massive. You know, and since we've started getting the Japanese runners, you know, we went back and looked at some of the breeding stock sales. They've been spending $13 million more at the breeding stock sales since they've been coming to the Breeders' Cup. So it really benefits the industry through and through.
I'd be remiss not to talk about the Breeders' Cup in Churchill Downs. So the 6 highest attendances ever have been 3 of them at Santa Anita, 3 of them at Churchill Downs. But we haven't seen the Breeders' Cup at Churchill Downs since 2018. And again, I realize that's not your area of expertise, but you definitely know more about it than we do. Will we ever see the Breeders' Cup at Churchill Downs again?
Yeah, of course. You know, we love Churchill Downs, and it's one of the most magical places for horse racing on the planet. And, you know, one of the cool things about Churchill is that it evolves more than any other racetrack in the world. You know, they do construction this year and that year, and it hasn't worked out really just on certain years because they're doing certain constructions. But, you know, we have wonderful relationships with everything at CDI, everyone at CDI, and we will be back there, and we're looking forward to it.
That's good to hear. Since I live in Louisville, I'm looking forward to the Breeders' Cup next year at Keeneland and the following year at the new Belmont Stakes, but I would love to see the Breeders' Cup back at Churchill Downs
Oh,
again.
we'll be back there. Don't worry about that.
So, Nick, I've got a softball question for you. I'm a Downton Abbey fan, and so it was really fun for me to see the finale at Ascot Racecourse. Can you talk about how that managed to evolve?
Yeah, I mean, let's be honest. Dramas that feature racing, not like the great stuff with the great documentary that was produced here with Katie Davis and everything like that, but the dramas in horse racing tend to be absolutely dire in terms of any reflection on how the sport actually is, certainly in Britain. But this was quite cool. They actually took considerable advice on the events, the protocols, the morning dress, the shape of the badges, the Royal Enclosure badges, where the Royal Enclosure was, how Josh will be the expert, but how you wear morning dress, how the royal procession works, and it was pretty good. So yeah, we have a few contacts who are obviously very close to the broadcast, down to the whole Downton Abbey team who are involved with Highclere Racing, as I'm sure many people will know. So there was a lot of advice through the Highclere team, through our own sort of experts and through historians to get it right. And I mean, it's a little bit sickly, the film, and a bit twee. And let's be honest about it, if you wrote down on a piece of paper exactly what you thought was going to happen, it would be what happened.
Yeah.
But that aside, the racing drama part was well done.
So did they approach you, or did you all open up your venue to them?
This is really interesting because we have a rule that you can't hire the Racecourse to be in a film as a racecourse, but for many reasons, because editorial control of certain things could backfire on you. It won't backfire with something like Downton, but there'd be no point filming at Ascot because it's had 2 redevelopments since the period that was covered there. So they actually found a small track in the north of England called Ripon in Yorkshire, which still had some sort of old-fashioned buildings that could be dressed, made to look like the old Ascot buildings. Of course, there's a lot of computer-generated stuff there as well. But they set it. They actually had the set at Ripon Racecourse in Yorkshire and did it there.
Nice. Well, I enjoyed seeing it. One of the things that makes for anybody who's not been to Royal Ascot, it's not just a day of racing. So there was a presentation yesterday that was talking about trying to get people to the races sooner. And the thing that they have everybody over a barrel on is that the royal procession happens at 2 o'clock and first post is at 2:30, and everybody wants to get there for the royal procession. And anybody who's watched Ascot knows about that. But unless you've been to Ascot, which I went for the first time this year, you don't know that there's this thing called the car park. And the car park is where you tailgate in the parking lot before and after the races. When did this car park it was the first time I've ever seen it. Like, when did this become a thing? Was it 100 years ago?
Yeah, probably. It's been going on for well over 100 years. But it's the culture is that people picnic in the car parks. They arrive early, they picnic, they come over for the royal procession. Of course, there's hospitality on site as well. We do about 20,000 covers, 25,000 covers a week, just in the restaurants. But the culture of going and having picnics. I mean, the car park, the owners and trainers car park 2 is the melting pot for the racing industry. You'll have been there, Donna, I'm sure. And the Breeders' Cup have a marquee in there, unbranded, just all nice and friendly.
Wait, Breeders' Cup had a marquee there and I wasn't invited? I went to Giles's.
Big mistake. Big mistake.
I'm gonna have to talk to you next year,
France
Josh.
Gallop have one, all this, but loads of trainers have that kind of thing. I think it's an interesting question. I don't think the answer to bringing people to the races early is to flood the program with loads of races no one wants to see. And that clearly doesn't work. Less can be more. And other reasons to come, whether it's amazing food, the parties in car parks. We have the old tradition where everybody stays and sings around the bandstand, old-fashioned English songs. If you tried to recreate it anywhere else, it would be naff and regarded as basically of another time. But it's so part of the ethos of Royal Ascot. So at 6 o'clock after the final race, tens of thousands of people stay and sing along to these old
Sweet
English
Caroline.
songs. Yeah, that's a newer edition. There are some, My Old Man's a Dustman and all that sort of stuff. But you don't want to flood the place with. I mean, for wagering, yes, of course, it's really important. But we're lucky in the UK. Wagering forms a much smaller part of our business plan than anywhere, well, apart from the Middle East, than anywhere else. Our revenues are 80% from old-fashioned hospitality, ticket sales, and then you add on sponsorship, partnerships, branding, licensing, etc. Betting's vitally important, and you wouldn't balance the books without it. But it is absolutely. You'll not hear a single person on course talking about handle. Nobody. It's just. I mean, you might look at the Whirlpool figures at the end of the day to get an idea. But it's just not in our ethos to focus on that. Of course, everyone is betting, but they're betting. They're betting in such different forums. They bet primarily through the bookmakers. The tote's very valuable in doing great things for racing, but it's a tiny. The pari-mutuel is a tiny part of the market in the UK. Everyone's playing on the fixed odds, which we all know that in an environment where you don't have a tote monopoly, your market share with pool betting will only go one way. I mean, it's been, if you look at what's happening in Australia, since the bookmakers operated there, their share of the pool has collapsed to something like 30 or 40%, having had 100. They're building it back up now. But when people
This is the bookmakers.
Yeah, when people have choice, they naturally gravitate towards fixed odds bookmakers because they provide the better value for punters and the concession offers the money back seconds, which is so hard for people to compete with. But we don't get a significant cut of that money because that's not how British and Irish racing is.
So when you're at
formulated.
the track at Royal Ascot, there's a area, you can do pari-mutuel wagering at Royal Ascot, but there's also an area where all the bookmakers are set up, and let's say that you, like Clandeghan, and he's 4-1 here and 5-1 here and 4.5-1 here, you can choose, and those are your fixed odds.
Yeah, most betting in the UK on course is fun betting. It's people who don't go very often. It's £5 here, £2 there, and it might be a bit bigger in the boxes, but most people who are betting online, and they're taking early prices because there's 20 odd bookmakers you can get the prices from. So, you know, you can shop around, get the price you want. We don't really bet exotics too much. So we don't really have an exacta or trifecta mentality. You know, people are betting the singles. They might be putting them in doubles and or trebles and things like that, but it's a totally different focus. Everything you think of about wagering in the United States is completely different in the United Kingdom.
Yeah. Robert, are we going to have time for questions? So if anybody has any questions, you can go ahead and step up to the microphone. I have one more question for you, Nick. For those of you who were in the room earlier, we heard from Rapoli, and he was talking about the international participation in the Breeders' Cup, and it wasn't something that he felt like was that important. In an Ascot Insider blog Q&A, you were very blunt in stating that having international horses at Royal Ascot is a fundamental part of our brand, and you described Ascot as Europe's flagship international racecourse, with Royal Ascot as the country's premier meeting. Can you talk about why that international participation, not like, Josh, I'm going to have you address it too after Nick, but Nick, can you talk about the importance of that international participation?
The international participation has changed Royal Ascot completely. You know, Royal Ascot has always been a big British race meeting and a huge British institution outside of the horse racing world. About 20 years ago, it was a very European race course. Obviously, the explosion well, there's always been powerful entities in Ireland, but the real explosion of the Coolmore, Aidan O'Brien, Ballydoyle element kicked that on, and then you had and then obviously we get a lot of French horses running. Over the last 15 to 20 years, we've made a real effort to find the markets in Australia. You know, we know we want sprinters from Australia. We know we want middle distance horses from Japan, milers, and sprinters. Anything from Japan will do because Japan is elite. You know, we want 2-year-olds from America because the 2-year-olds in America are further forward than ours, so they have an edge. They can have an edge there, as we've seen through the likes of Wesley Ward. Yeah, it's kind of. I wouldn't say it's petered off, but well, it hasn't petered off because the Gulfstream wildcards that we run, we've seen horses coming out of the Gulfstream trials in April or May, I think, with tremendous success at the Royal Ascot. A couple of winners, placed horses, that's gone well.
Some of the George Weaver horses have won.
George Weaver, yeah, that's the name. Sorry. And then you're looking at, you know, you need. There are great turf horses in America, but a lot of them sadly have come from Europe in the first place, so they're not going to be coming back. That's the problem we're finding in Australia too. I mean, we'd love to get Via Sistina to come and run at Royal Ascot now. She was second in the Champion Stakes at Ascot on her final run as a European horse, but she's gone through the roof in Australia, and we'd love to have her back, but why would you send a horse that's been exported back? It would be a strange thing to do.
Yeah. So, Josh, I want you to address that too. We talked about the importance of having the Japanese horses there and how it affects the handle, but just the overall international participation and the importance of that for the Breeders' Cup event.
Yeah, well, the Breeders' Cup was built to be a global event, and it's a global sport. You know, a lot of our big owners, I mean, Nick mentioned Kier Jabachian, he has horses based in America and England and Ireland. Godolphin the same way. You know, Sheikh Mohammed, who's in his operation, are one of our biggest supporters. I mean, they own arguably the best horse in America this year. They have some of the best horses in England, Ireland, and France. So even a lot of our owners are breeders that have farms in Kentucky or Florida or England and Ireland and France and Australia. And, you know, as Thomas said, if you looked at the pedigree of some of their horses, a lot of them are American pedigrees because they've been buying American pedigrees, the best pedigrees in the world. And, you know, Japan probably arguably has the greatest broodmare band in the world sitting in northern Japan, and a lot of it are mares that came from Kentucky and England and Ireland and France.
Yeah, absolutely. I see we have a question over here. Rachel?
Yes, okay. All of this talk of Japan Cup, I was very lucky to be out there with Tom a couple weeks ago, and through America's Best Racing, you get to travel and experience so many U.S. races. And when it comes to contributing to the handle, never in my life have I, A, seen a track packed out with young people, And also, every single one of them was betting the entire time. You know, you were having these girls that looked like, you know, they're in their 20s taking selfies, not with cocktails or mint juleps, but with 5 betting vouchers in their hand, and they're winning, they're animated. And the plushie and everything is just so clearly ingrained into that culture. So just seconding the motion that the more Japanese horses that come over into the US, those fans are obsessed.
But that
and
goes
love
back
them.
to your panel earlier, because it goes back to the fan engagement and the fan engagement on multiple levels as they're doing and at a young age. So not just like getting people to the races who can bet, back to Nick's point, but to come to enjoy the whole experience and give them multiple ways to participate.
And probably it is the only racetrack that I've ever been to where there is not 1, not 2, not 3, but 4 massive playgrounds for kids. They're just everywhere. And one of the JRA employees that helped take us around for the day and translate, he wanted to start working in horse racing because he grew up going to the track as a kid. Like, his family was not involved at all, but it's just what you did. It's like a park, basically. Also, Donna, I wasn't sure if you mentioned the Admire Terra video, because that was something that we did post, speaking of social media.
Oh, sorry, I didn't see that one.
Well, check it out. Check it out. You'll like it.
You are right about the younger generation being, it's a terrible cliche, but the younger generation are important. There's an organisation working in Britain now which has had an incredible impact. It's called Invades. So that terrified all the race courses to start with. But these guys work for all the they work for national universities everywhere, and they can bring upwards of 6,000-7,000 people to the races. We had 6,000.
So these would be
students.
university students.
Yeah. So you build them a special area where they could have, which is bespoke to what they want. But they don't just hang there. They go around the racecourse. They go to the paddock. They have a look at how things are going, and they bet. You know, they get into it. They really, and you know, the idea that they come and drink and yeah, they might have a couple of drinks, but they're so smart and they're there for a great day out. And it really does work. Give them what they want.
Question?
Stuart Slow, a question for Tom. The JRA principles that you listed included together with our customers, and your organization is well known for the Erie McKinnon, where the fans select 10 of the runners. If a North American racetrack was to emulate the Erie McKinnon, what suggestions would you give to them so it would be successful as yours?
Yes, Erie McKinnon is going to be held at the end of December, and it's going to be coming soon. And the runners elected, top 10 horses are elected by fan voting, and others I think maximum field size is 16 or 18, and so it means the rest of the horses are elected by the earnings, money. I think it's really fun. You know, Japanese racing fan loves Erie McKinnon. Some people say it's much loves more than Japanese derby, Japan Cup. Erie McKinnon is the most important race, and it's a kind of national event. It's not only for the racing fans. So huge event, and I think it's it's good for the American racing industry to think about it. I think in Australia do the same thing, nearly the same thing, and it should be really focused from not only the racing fans, from general public, you know, pay attention. Yeah.
Can I just add something to that? Japan has the best pattern in the world because Japan has a controlled pattern, a quality controlled pattern. If a race in Japan, for example, has ratings, a Group 2 race has ratings that would make it a Group 1, they don't go and get it to be Group 1 because that's not what they do. They want a limited number of Group 1 races with the trials, effectively, the Group 2s in the right place. And that lends itself to being able to have something like the Erie McKinnon because it's the only race in its category there. If you look at the pattern inflation everywhere else, in the United States, pretty bad. In Australia, really bad. In Europe, just about under control. You can't do those. It's harder to do those kind of things because if you put in a race like that in America or Europe or Australia, unless it's worth absolutely 30 million like an Everest, then all you'll do is split fields. But in Japan, they don't get split fields. They have such a limited number of Group 1 races. Guess what? They're all full. You can market your racing properly in Japan because guess what? You know exactly what's going to run because there's nowhere else to go because the pattern is perfect in Japan and you can pay me later.
So it sounds like, Nick, what you're saying is that that works really well in Japan, but it might not translate that well to another market.
It would work very well if everybody got hold of pattern inflation and controlled the pattern properly and made sure that races were, the Group 1 races were limited, the field sizes always stood up, and that the punters and the punters got genuine competition between the best horses. You know, the Breeders' Cup is as close as you're going to get to that. Breeders' Cup Classic, pretty much everything's going to run, right?
Yeah.
You know, that's great. The Arc at the end of the year, everyone's going to run in that. But you look at the summer in Europe and the run-up to the Breeders' Cup, and in Australia, it's just every week. They're just splitting fields all the time by having, and it's cheap black type too. You know, if the Group 1 races are too easy to win, the black type you get is not as valuable. You know, you can get Group 1 black type with 111 horse in Australia. You'd be very lucky to get Group 2 black type with that in Europe.
Yeah. So it sounds like, Josh, this is an idea you can take back to Breeders' Cup when they have to make that final selection. You know, they can send it to the fans instead.
Yeah. I mean, we're always up to evolving.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's going to do it for our panel. It's cocktail hour, so I don't want to keep you guys over. Thank you so much, and thank you to our panelists.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you. So on behalf of the University of Arizona and the Racetrack Industry Program, I just want to thank you, this panel, and everyone here for taking part in our Global Symposium on Racing. Your engagement, your ideas, your commitment to our industry is what makes this event so special. So mark your calendars. December 7th through 9th, 2026. We'll be back here, December 7th through 9th. And go out there. We have open bar. We have Sonoran hot dogs. For those of you that don't know what a Sonoran hot dog is, learn. Lots of toppings on your hot dog. Enjoy, and we'll see you next year. Safe travels. Thank you.